into computer.
And we just, there's Pam.
Pam. Is that Diane?
It is. Hi.
Where? She's not on yet.
Oh, I'll start video. There we go. Hi. It's dark.
Diane. It's Diane Reeby. Oh my gosh, this is like, for me, this is like homecoming. I went to high school with a few of these girls.
I love it.
Oh my God, I played troll dolls with you when we were like 8, 9, and 10.
Oh, that's funny.
I'm just
Let me know when I should start. I guess we.
Oh, yeah, I will. I just am getting something where Betsy Whitmore, Betsy's trying to get on, is looking for a Zoom link. It's on.
Molly, is that?
I sent an email out to the friends.
I know.
And of course, it's always on the website.
I know. I'm going to send this to Betsy right now, and then we can.
Diane Reeby, you look just like your mother. That's a compliment.
Yes. I hear that from my brother and sister all the time. The older I get, the more I look like her.
Yes, I agree with that.
Is she still alive?
No, she passed away probably 14 years ago, I guess.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we go way back, don't we? As long as it's
We
fun.
go way back.
Hi, Pam.
I'm gonna wait.
I'm waiting for Kathy to give
You
me.
just you keep waiting for me.
I knew that.
I'm gonna wait 30 seconds, then we're gonna
I know
go.
her.
Adam, what do you see, Adam?
I forgot.
No, that's Kathy Weymouth.
Yeah, she's
You
married
saw
to Rich.
her.
I got it.
She's in Virginia.
Diane, some of these people
Who's
are
that?
related to Pam, so we can't say anything.
True. Adam, you tell me when you think we're ready to go.
Give it one more minute.
Okay.
Will
Okay.
do.
And I'm gonna see Waymo.
Checking the couch chair, maybe it's on. There's people jumping on everywhere.
Yeah, your coffee's right there.
Make sure it's not here. Behind me? No. We're hunting for a phone. Like we always do. Everybody does.
This is totally informal. Keep looking for the phone. Come on, Gary.
Gary's like, oh, Pam said hi. We're in an inn in Vermont, if anybody wants to know where we are. My husband and I have been cross-country skiing since Sunday from inn to inn to inn. So, and we couldn't ski, I don't know in Holderness, but here it's like over 50 and pouring rain now. So we had to come in.
Oh, miserable.
So no skiing today, but it's been spectacular. And it's funny, it started out like -9 and now today it's 50.
Yeah. Oh.
All right, Kathy,
Yeah.
whenever you'd like to
Okay, well, we
introduce.
can start. We can start. Well, welcome everybody. I'm Kathy Weymouth, and I'm a member of the Holderness Free Library Friends Group. And we have started a program. This is our 3rd year, I believe, of having Thursday talks, typically the 3rd Thursday of the month for 6 months, typically the winter months, of inviting somebody local to share his or her story with us. And tonight we're lucky to have Wendy Booker, who lives in Ashland, New Hampshire. And she is an author, an educator, an adventurer. She was diagnosed with MS in 1998, and she tells some stories about choices that she had at that point. She was a runner, and I'm gonna let her tell her story beginning there, but she did end up running a number of marathons. She went after those 7 highest summits in the world and managed 6.5 of them. She can tell you more about that, just pretty extraordinary. But all of this adventuring and meeting those challenges has been around being a advocate or an advocate for MS kind of global awareness. And I want to keep that in mind. She will share now with us her story. And if you have questions, and by the way, this is being recorded, if you have questions, you can put them into the chat room or ask those directly at the end, maybe in 45 minutes or so. We'll open it up to questions. But Wendy, we're really excited to have you with us. Thank you so much for taking time away from your cross-country skiing and that inn in Vermont. Welcome, welcome. It's all yours.
This is so different now in the days of Zoom. Since about 2000, I've been working as a motivational speaker, and it's very different when you're just looking into a little computer than looking out over an audience. But I'll do my best. I don't do as well when I'm not live. I much prefer interaction with people than with a computer screen. It's quite different. But thank you, Kathy. This is fun. I love doing this, and especially because some very old friends, I hate to say that we're very old, but girls I went to high school with a long time ago are on here with me. One is in Seattle, Kathy's cousin. And Diane, normally you're half the year in Seattle and half the year in Arizona, right? So we have some far Westerner visitors, so that's really neat. Everybody always asks me, was I always like this? And but probably Pam and Diane will say, no, I don't think she was like this when we knew her. I was not particularly adventuresome. And I was going along life. I was in my 40s and had 3 sons and was in the PTO and doing, soccer and all the mom stuff. And I was going to the gym and doing what I thought I was supposed to do. And found out in 1998 that I had multiple sclerosis, but it didn't start out like a bang. Multiple sclerosis, I'm sure all of you either know of somebody or have somebody in your life who has it. It's used to be considered a rare disease, and it was listed with the National Organization of Rare Diseases, but not so much anymore. It's becoming more and more, I don't want to say occurs more and more. It's because of the advancements of MRI that it's being easier to diagnose, versus it's not that it's getting more severe. It's just that we're finding out people have it who probably didn't even know they had it. So the incident rate is the same. It's just the discovery has gotten easier or more clear. Anyway, in 1998, I have to say it's funny to get a disease like MS, not knowing a thing about it. Prior to the 90s, it was an extremely bad diagnosis to receive because there was nothing that could be done. They used to use, even in the 80s, a part of the diagnosis was done by putting people into a hot tub and or very hot water. And if they came out with neurological deficiencies, mostly numbness and tingling, difficulty with their extremities, that's part of how they made the diagnosis. And that was as late as the 80s. And it sounds so dark ages to me now. But coming along with it in the 90s was a big game changer, because again, prior to the 90s, there were also no therapies for MS. If you developed and had a flare-up or an exacerbation, as it's called, the most they could offer was a course of salumedrol steroids intravenously. They still do use that, although we try to avoid it because it is very hard on the body, but that was all that was available. So now I come along just as the very first therapies, and I want to say therapies, they're not a cure. They're called disease-modifying therapies, and they're out there to keep us longer in remission. And that has been a big game changer for the face of MS. Now, of the MS population, 85% are diagnosed like me in what's called relapsing remitting, whereby it comes and goes. And 15% get a far more severe course of the disease called primary progressive. They don't know how that changes or what happens that one goes one way, one the other, but that's on the onset. Another portion of that 85% with relapsing remitting can develop what's called secondary progressive. So they may start out like me. If you saw me, you would be hard pressed to say I had MS. Once in a while it'll show, but it's much more internal for me. But people who develop the secondary progressives definitely start out like myself and then take a very spiral and become quite debilitated by the illness. Those are the ones that have really done the best with these therapies, myself included, but those who, it keeps us longer in remission. So the chances of getting worse are what these drugs are helping us live a more normal life. So anyway, none of this I knew. And I started running because my friend and I got thrown out of every gym we went to for talking too much. And we ran out of choices for our exercise. So we started to run. And I always start my story there because it's amazing to me that 26.2 miles, that's the distance of a marathon, for me definitely became what I call the distance of a lifetime. And I sincerely doubt I would ever have taken on running the Boston Marathon had I not found out I had multiple sclerosis. So I start running with this friend, Carol. But what was also interesting is almost to the day of my diagnosis, Carol was diagnosed with breast cancer. We both were stopped in our tracks. And it really doesn't matter what the illness, a chronic illness will always take your breath away and stop whatever you're doing. And it did that to both of us. But we also were interested, we had each other, which was kind of interesting to talk to ping it off of, how are you doing? And she used to say she thought she was better off with MS, with breast cancer than MS. And I thought, oh my gosh, no. And she said, I feel with breast cancer, I know what I'm facing. With MS, I wouldn't want to face the unpredictability. So it's funny how people look at differently. So it really helped to have a buddy. So anyway, we start running. And about a year into it, it was really the running that led to my diagnosis, because it was while I was on one of those runs with Carol that I lost the ability in my left leg. And I started noticing numbness and tingling. And I thought it was from running. And I always thought of my dad, because anytime we go somewhere and he would see somebody out running, he'd say, now, how good can that sport be? Look how miserable that guy looks. So I thought, oh my gosh, my father was right. It's really bad. But anyway, so at first that's what I thought. But over time, that numbness and tingling took over pretty much my entire left side. And then I had vision troubles. I had all the classic MS, freaky things happen, but that's the other part of the diagnosis. It doesn't come on with a bang. The diagnosis is made when you have weird neurological events separated by time and space. That was a very classic MS. And it was finally that numbness and tingling and a fall for no apparent reason that led me to seek medical help. And that's when I got the diagnosis. Jumping to today, I don't mean to jump around too much, but I did start a nonprofit called MS Insight. And the reason I have it, and I have a bunch of patients with MS working with me, is that we want to try to capture that person when they first hear the words multiple sclerosis, because you will stand there, stare at the doctor in disbelief. Then you will picture the worst you've ever seen of the illness. An aunt, a neighbor, somebody in a wheelchair, somebody who doesn't look very well. And that's your starting point. And that's where I want to say, wait, this is not the illness. I like jokingly say, this ain't your mama's MS. And going back to prior to the 90s, that would have been a completely different diagnosis. So my mission now, and the mission of why I took on all these mountains, is to show what people with MS are capable of, and to teach them how to become advocates for themselves and navigate through this diagnosis so that it's not as frightening as we were led to believe because of what it used to be so recently. Really recent was it seen as a very, very bad and debilitating illness. So anyway, I find out I have MS. Carol finds out she has cancer. She's doing great, by the way, 20 something years later. So we're running along. And out of the clear blue, Carol calls me up one night and she says, why don't we run the Boston Marathon? And I joke because it sounded like she said, why don't we go to the mall? And we're thinking, how hard can it be? And we won't tell anybody, because if we don't like it and it becomes a difficult struggle, the less people who know, the better. Let's just train. And on the marathon day, we'll jump in as what's called a bandit. A bandit is somebody that doesn't have the official number. Who's going to notice two middle-aged ladies? There's like 40,000 runners. We'd have the satisfaction of running Boston, and that's how we went into it. Until about 2 months prior to the marathon, and we decided that this was an awful lot of work, that we were suffering terribly, and we wanted everybody to know about it. And the only way we were going to get the notoriety we now felt we deserved was to get a number. But never having run before, and let alone Boston, if you're not fast, you can't get in. It's not like other races where you pay to play, you have to qualify. And historically, somebody with MS has not got a very good chance, once in a while, but not a very good chance to qualify. But we found out you can run these major marathons by running for one of the national charities. Leukemia, there's hundreds of them. For the blind, Jimmy Fund, they all have numbers for Boston. So we thought we were shoo-ins because we figured, who's going to turn us down? We actually have the illness. rarely do you have people running, and we thought we got it. So I call the National MS Society and I say, my name is Wendy Booker and I'd like to get a number. And I had a really nice, polite lady on the phone, and she said, I'm sorry, we have a waiting list of 150 runners for next year. Well, I figured Carol would get a number, because who's going to turn down somebody with breast cancer? And Carol never spoke to a human. She went through a voice messaging system and had to leave a message, and they never did call her back. And then we laughed, because you know how you want something, but you didn't know you wanted it till you're told you couldn't have it. And then you really wanted it more than you ever thought you did. That's exactly what happened. We had to get a number. So I called the National MS Society back, get that same polite woman on the phone. And I said, you know, I called you yesterday, and would it help if I told you I have MS? Well, I got a number within an hour. The number was 18,694. And Carol still hadn't spoken to a human. So we came up with what I thought was the best known plan to man. We would take the number and tear it in half. Carol would be 186, I'd be the 94. And as long as we crossed the finish line together, it's done by computer, no one would know the difference, because it would register as one person. Well, the MS Society had a fit. As I said, I didn't know that these numbers were that valuable. They didn't like the idea we were going to tear one in half, so they got Carol a number as well. And so now we are officially entered into the Boston Marathon. Now, what we hadn't counted on is that we signed a contract. And in that contract, we agreed to raise $2,000 apiece. We had 6 weeks to do it. And just to be sure we were good for our word, they took our credit cards. All I could think of is, where am I going to possibly come up? Races are like 25 bucks. How am I going to justify $2,000 charge to a credit card for something I'm still thinking, if it gets uncomfortable, I'm going to the mall. So we were all in. And I had to do a big shakedown of family and friends and anybody and everybody to get money. And somewhere along the line, the drug company making this drug that I told you was such a game changer in the 90s heard about me getting to run the Boston Marathon. And they called me up and I said, unless you have money, I have no time to talk to you. And they said, wait, just wait. And I said, no, seriously, either. And I didn't realize anything about the pharmaceutical industry. I had no idea what I was talking to. They did not give me money that first time. Maybe they did $50, but not pharmaceutical money at that time. But anyway, I raised over $7,000 in 6 weeks. So I shook a lot of trees. Well, I felt terrible for Carol. She didn't even have the disease. Now she has to raise $2,000. So I said to her, I'll tell you what, anything I make over this $2,000, I'll share with you. Well, she's a stubborn little cuss. And she said, I don't want your money. And she on her own raised over $5,000 for MS. And here she's got breast cancer. So talk about the value of what I now refer to as a care partner. And when I do my programs, that's why I always keep Carol in my message. MS is one of those illnesses that you share with everybody around you. And in particular, there's usually one person who holds your banner and takes on this disease as if it was their own. And they never get enough of the notoriety and the gratitude they deserve. And that's a care partner. They'll go, that's your person who hears your song and you can call in the middle of the night and they don't think you're whacked, and they'll take you to the doctor, they'll listen, there'll be that other set of ears, whoever it is, it's always that one special person. And as I started on my MS journey, Carol truly became that person who said, you know what, I am going to make sure this woman gets through this illness. And I learned so much from her as a result. And as I say, those care partners really never get enough of the thank yous that they deserve, because those are the unsung hero for those of us living with multiple sclerosis. So anyway, we run this Boston Marathon, and then I came to realize that I was defining myself by what I call my 3 S's. That's self-discovery, serendipity, and stubbornness. And I thought that really defined my MS journey. And I thought, before I use those words, I better look them up. You never should use words unless you're absolutely sure what they mean. So the first one I got to was stubborn. I looked it up the old-fashioned way. I didn't Google it. I went to Webster's and it said obstinate, and that's not the nicest character quality. But when it comes to battling an illness like MS, I think stubbornness is really up there, because it's very hard to tell us no. And I will continue to beat my head against the wall and reinvent something 1,000 times. But stubbornness is truly what keeps me pushing at this illness. And so I think when you get diagnosed with MS, your neurologist probably says, oh, and oh, by the way, you're also going to be stubborn, because it certainly does come with the territory. Now, serendipity is a funny one because serendipity is a fortuitous accident. And I know if you think about MS and fortuitous accident, you would never put the two together. But for serendipity to me is the good stuff that happens, the things that come zinging your way that you never expected, like, you know, like finding a really cool piece of sea glass on the beach on the same day that you had promised a friend a piece of blue sea glass because she lives in Kansas. Weird stuff that comes along. Serendipity is just really cool zingers that come your way. And I think when you have MS, I'm still figuring this on out. Do you have more serendipity or are you just more in tune to serendipity for the good stuff that happens? Then the last one is self-discovery. That one is really hard, but that's how we figure out who and what we are now that we have a chronic illness. And it truly is a journey. And you start from that moment where you're looking at the doctor in disbelief. You flash to that bad looking person in your past who is struggling with the illness. And I call that the sit on this, I call it, actually my term for it is lay on the couch, eat bonbons and watch Oprah. Because what happens to you is you get immobilized. You don't want to look to the future because it's frighteningly unpredictable. You don't want to look to the past because now you're mourning what you think you've lost. So you're immobilized and you truly do lay on the couch, eat bonbons and watch Oprah. And you do that for a while. But my mission has come to say to people with a chronic illness, but in my case with MS, you can't stay there. You need to get off that couch and you need to live. And you need to live in whatever way you want to. And you have to put that disease in the back seat. Now, that's not that easy. And it's one of my biggest missions to say to the people with MS, you need to find something you're passionate about. It doesn't have to be physical just because I'm crazy, but something you love to do. The hardest part is finding that passion because there's a lot of false starts. But you know, maybe it's learning how to play the guitar or a foreign language or traveling. It doesn't matter what it is. But when you have something you love to do, your mind is off your MS. So you wake up every morning, you think, oh, great, today I'm going to take Spanish lessons. You're not thinking about the multiple sclerosis. You're more thinking about the thing you want to do and love to do. And for that time your mind is engaged, the MS takes a back seat. That's where you're going to get your strength. That's where you're going to hear your voice. And that's what it's going to keep you going. And as I said, the hardest part is finding that passion. But I can promise, and it's really hard to make a global promise like that, but I can promise you that while your mind is engaged doing something you love, and it doesn't even matter if you're battling a chronic illness, while you're doing something you really love to do, all the bad stuff is in the back. You don't have to face it during that time you're doing it. And that's where you get off that couch. Now, I do revisit the couch from time to time. You will hear me tell you about it. So now we're going to jump. How do you go from running marathons to some of the highest mountains in the world? And the short answer is I opened my big mouth. That truly is the answer. After I ran that marathon, that was in the spring of 2000. That fall, I was invited to speak at the American Neurological Conference, a huge conference with all the neurologists, not just MS, but all the neurologists. And after I was done speaking, they invited me out to dinner in a very fancy restaurant. We sat at a big round table and all the top doctors involved with multiple sclerosis were there. And it was quite a mix of people from California, but this was the big think tank of the doctors doing the big research and all the big studies for multiple sclerosis. I was there. Alan Osmond, Donny Osmond's son, was there, and some people from a public relations company. It was a very strange mix of people, but definitely the neurologists were the whole reason for the dinner. Well, these doctors are going on and on about mice models and B1 cells and T2 cells, and I fixated on Alan Osmond. I said, how many kids do you have? How do you guys do Christmas? Now, I knew he was one of the famous Osmond brothers. All I can tell you is I felt all the doctors going, who invited this ditz? I missed all of that. Well, finally, the conversation at the table came around to mountain climbing. And the woman to my left, who happened to be the vice president of Fleischman Hillard Public Relations, I didn't know what any of this meant, said, we've had an opportunity come up. There's a gentleman from Boulder, Colorado, who is looking to put the first team of climbers with multiple sclerosis unguided on Denali. Now, Denali, doesn't that sound hot and tropical? I'm thinking pina coladas. I'm thinking it's in Hawaii. I am clueless. I'm thinking I just ran the marathon. How hard can a mountain named Denali be? I am your woman. Well, everybody was talking mountain. No one was really paying. It was just the doctors were probably still talking doctor, and that was the end of the conversation. And I'm like, wow, what just happened? But that was it. So about 3 weeks went by, and I thought, I'm going to call that woman back. And by the way, this was before Google. Had I gone home and Googled Denali, I probably wouldn't be here talking to you. I only knew that it was a car and a mountain, but I knew nothing else than that. So 3 or 4 weeks later, I called this lady back and I say, that mountain Denali, where is it? She said, Alaska. Oh, I thought, oh, the only mountain I know of in Alaska is McKinley. She said, same mountain. That took my breath away. And I'm thinking, oh my God, it's going to be really cold. I said, that's a huge mountain. She said, yes. I said, I can't decide. I can't give you an answer, right? Even though I jumped into it, I pictured my social studies books and I thought, this is not good. And I said, can I think of, yes. She said, you can take 6 months. They knew that this was a huge decision. In that 6 months, I got my hands on anything and everything I could read. And surprisingly enough, the very first book I got was aptly titled Surviving Denali. And the book is broken down into chapters according to the death and mayhem on the mountain: cerebral edema, pulmonary edema, crevasse falls, frostbite. What's extremely interesting is at the end of every chapter is a chart, and the chart lists the climber's name, what happened to him, where it happened to him, and how much it costs the federal government to remove his body from the mountain. Oh, well, it was a very hard decision. And it took a lot of soul searching, but there were 3 reasons I decided to do it. The first was more my ego. Never in my life was I going to be offered this opportunity, ever. There was no second chance to say, let me wait. So I knew if I didn't grab it, it wasn't going to come along again. And I was definitely curious as to whether I could do it. The second, more important, was to encourage the newly diagnosed to get on one of these therapies that were so brand new and were game changers. And the third was to show the world what people with MS were capable of. And so with that in mind, I became the sole woman on a 7-man team, MS on Denali 2002. Now, we didn't summit. There's no surprise in that. And the reason we didn't summit, if you might have missed the one word I threw in there, which I missed and I knew nothing about, we did it unguided. Unguided is similar to playing Russian roulette with a fully loaded gun, especially if 7 people have multiple sclerosis, and at any given day, somebody is going to have an exacerbation. That was probably one of the dumbest decisions I had ever made, but I didn't know what unguided on a major peak meant. We had no right to be up on that mountain. And so I think I made it to 14,000. They dropped like flies. We ended up coming home unsuccessful. And I went back to the drug company who is now sponsoring me, Teva Neuroscience, of the drug that I was taking. And at the time, the drug was a daily injection, which I was able to inject every single day up on Denali. I came back and I said, you need to send me back. They said, no. They said, we're in the business of saving lives, not killing people by putting them on Denali. To which I want to say, really? I can't believe they said that, but that's what they said since we nearly died up there. And I said, you know what? You have to listen to me. This has nothing to do with Denali, but it has everything to do with multiple sclerosis. We can't always get to the top. We have to try a little harder, take a little longer, and dig a little deeper. That's where that stubbornness definitely plays right in. Well, I pestered them long enough that they finally said yes, they would send me back to Denali. While I had them, at that moment, I decided I'm not just stopping at Denali. And I turned to this company, the vice president and president of Teva Neuroscience in Kansas City, and I said, I don't want just Denali, I want something called the 7 Summits. I had to educate them what that meant because I said MS has gone global. It's not just here in the US. And I want to be able to say, we are going worldwide with our mission of showing people with MS what we're capable of. And lo and behold, they said yes. And so I went back to Denali in 2004 and became the first person to summit. And everybody says, what do you take with you to the top of a mountain? And what's interesting, by the time you get to the top of these big peaks, you take extremely little with you. Mostly what you can put in your pocket. There always is water. I take a man's ashes, which has become a big part of my mission. While I was training for Denali, I was at the gym with a 50-pound backpack on. That backpack was filled with black sunflower seeds and weights. And that's what a pack of 50 pounds feels like. And you have to spend a lot of time with that on your back. And a woman came up and asked if I would take her husband to the top of Denali. He was a professor at Hampshire College in Massachusetts. He always had wanted to climb Denali and go around the world. And I thought that would be the only mountain, but I took John's ashes to the top of Denali. Now, when I found out I was going to do the 7 summits, I went back to Lee. I said, listen, can we put John in 7 envelopes? So we put John in 7 envelopes. Then Everest took more, so twice. And then we put John in. John has been all over the place. So I definitely fulfilled the family's wishes. But John became my big inspiration because it really is something wonderful to take somebody's ashes to the top of a mountain. And so John has gone around the world with me and has always been part of my mission. So that's what goes to the top. So then I won't go into all the mountains. I will show you some pictures. It became a mission for 8 years. And if you're not aware of the mountains, the highest in North America, of course, is Denali or McKinley. They have returned the name back to Denali. That means the great one. It was only named McKinley in the turn around when McKinley was running for president in early, I think 1910. And it was a gold prospector who named it as a political move to show that McKinley was the gold standard. So it was just like a big banner. And that's why the name was put as McKinley. But President Obama has put it back to Denali, interestingly enough. So that's the highest in North America. It measures 23,000 feet, 23,220, I believe, 20,320. Interestingly enough, the top of Denali is only 100 miles from the Arctic Circle. And because of the barometric pressure on the body, it's this little less than Everest, but it's very, very hard on the body. It's right on that line where you would start to need oxygen. I did it, most people do it without oxygen, but you can only remain on the summit for a very short time because of that pressure on the body. It is technically higher, the vertical miles of Denali. Denali is 7 vertical miles, Everest is 5. It's definitely a very similar climb to Everest minus the Khumbu ice falls. It's a very difficult mountain, made more difficult because you don't have the support of the Sherpa. You have to carry everything yourself. So you wear a 50-pound backpack and you carry a 70-pound sled attached to your hips, and that's your food for a month. When you get too high on the mountain, you have to ditch the sled because it gets too steep. So the sled stays at 14 and you go on from there. The other unique thing about Denali that most of the other big peaks don't have is you have to climb it twice. The reason is you're doing it without oxygen, and the adage is carry high and sleep low. You cannot possibly carry all the gear you need for 1 month of an expedition. So you carry what you will need, dig a hole in the snow, bury it, and go back down. So you start low. And if you're reading a book, you tear the book up, which is very difficult to do because you're afraid you're going to read too quickly. And the best part of the book is buried somewhere else up higher on the mountain. But you do anything you do like that, you separate your clothing, your food, and you carry it up, dig a hole, bury it, and go back down. And you do that the whole time you're climbing until your summit day. And that's the only day you go to the top and back down. So it's a unique climb because every day that you are on it, you think, oh my God, I got to do this again tomorrow or the day after. You do take rests. It does take approximately 28 days to climb. So Denali is North America. Kilimanjaro is Africa. Aconcagua is South America. It's the highest peak outside of the Himalaya. Elbrus is, it's in Russia, but it's in Europe, the European continent. I have to think of the order of, Vincent Massive is Antarctica, Kosciuszko is Australia, and Everest, of course, is Asia. I picked a unique order to do them in, saving Everest for the last, and that again had to do with the sponsorship. They were in for a penny, in for a pound. They had already supported me on all these mountains. I knew that they weren't going to bail out near the end, so I kept Everest for the last. And Everest is a unique climb. I can't say I would ever want to go back. When you see the pictures, as I'm sure you have seen, of they call it the Congo line, hundreds and hundreds of climbers all stacked up upon one another to get to the top. It's only going to get worse. It was already like that when I climbed it. I did it in 2009 and then again in 2010. I did both times. I made it to what's called the Lhotse face, which is about 24,000 feet. I still had a Mount Washington to go. When people ask how far, Everest, of course, is 29,000, and I made it. I probably had about Mount Washington left. And I started noticing in 2009 when I was on the mountain that I was starting to feel numbness and tingling in my left side. I ignored it at first. I then was having trouble even holding on to my ice axe, and I knew what was going on. I knew I was having an MS flare-up. I thought, okay, that's, you're going to do these mountains with MS, that's going to happen. And so I decided to turn around. It's a very difficult decision, but it's not yours alone because you are tied to a Sherpa team. You also have a guide. And so the decision you make can irrevocably change everyone's life. If they die from a bad decision. The unique part with Everest that most people don't realize is you only have one chance to go for the summit. So you go on these expeditions, they take 2.5 months. If you turn back, it's not like you can say, I'm going to wait a few days and try again. You're done. As soon as you say I'm off, you go. Your body has anything over about 18,000 feet in altitude. The body starts literally eating itself, both nutritionally, oxygen, cells, everything is really affected. The longer you're there, the worse it is on the body. So you really want to get down and out as soon as you can. And getting up and down is extremely difficult. Again, you do climb the lower portions of Everest. The famous Khumbu Ice Falls, which is the most dangerous part of the mountain, is right out of base camp. I've been through the Khumbu, I think 6 or 8 times. That's counting both directions. That's where you see them on the ladders. The first year I did it, there were 72 ladders to cross. The second year, there were 80 something ladders. There's a crew of Sherpa that we call the Icefall Docks. That's a very Anglican expression for the 7 Sherpa who maintain the route through the Khumbu Ice Falls, which has to be maintained daily. They check the ladders and all the security, the ice picks and all the wires and such to hold the ladders, which of course in the daily sunshine start to melt out. And the other problem is that the Khumbu is always moving. And to give you an indication, the Sherpa refer to it as popcorn, and it does look like popcorn the size of buildings. And that popcorn moves all the time. You see it move, you hear it move. It's a frightening place to be, but that's the famous Khumbu. And you try to limit your exposure to that as much as you can because it is so dangerous to go through it. It takes a good fast climber can probably get through the Khumbu in 6 hours. I think it took me 8 to 10. It's quite a difficult climb, and the ladders don't help matters. Most of the ladders are horizontal. They're going over big crevasses. Some of the crevasses, I started to rate the crevasses. I'd look down and I'd say, oh, that's a broken leg. Or I'd look down and say, you could drive a Volkswagen in it. And now, or I'd look down and if you can't see the bottom, it's just black. You just go across that ladder and don't even think, because that means you're going into the middle of the earth. Anyway, the whole environment on Everest is difficult. From the day you arrive at base camp, which is at 17,008, you're there for quite a long time getting acclimatized. You have quite a big Sherpa support. We could not climb these mountains without them. Now I'm going to back up a little bit because part of my story, and I don't want to go too terribly crazy. Before doing Everest, it was recommended to me to climb a mountain in Tibet called Cho-Yu. And I was scheduled to climb Cho-Yu in 2008, making my attempt on Everest in 2009. 2008 was the year of the Summer Olympics in Beijing, kind of like now. And the Chinese decided they didn't want any of the Sherpa who are originally from Tibet, and there is all the political controversy there. They didn't want the Sherpa climbing in Tibet. And that they closed down all the permits and we were not allowed to climb Cho-Yu until after the Summer Olympics. They also carried the torch to the top of Everest 2 years in a row to photograph it. They did it 2 years in a row to make sure that if something went wrong, it still showed that the Chinese had gotten to the top of Everest during the Olympics. The Chinese side is called the north side and the Nepal is the south side. And the Nepali side does contain the Khumbu Icefall. The Chinese side does not. But anyway, Everest was out of the picture. Cho-Yu was closed down. Nothing was happening. And so we had to wait until after the Olympics. So that following fall, we thought, let's make a go for Cho-Yu. Most of the Himalayan mountains have one season, but sometimes there's a short second season in the fall, while most of the climbing takes place in the spring. So I'm in an airplane flying across the globe, and I find out that the Chinese again had closed Cho-Yu. There would be no climbers even in the fall of 2008. And now it had to do with Tibet entirely and the Dalai Lama, and it was all politics. By then I had landed in Nepal, in Kathmandu, And we decided that we might as well climb something because now we're there. And we decided to take a very obscure path up a very different area opposite of Everest to a space called the Mira Valley. No one's there, to climb a very small mountain, well, small relative to Everest, called Barunse. While climbing Barunse, there was another team of 2 women from Austria, and their 4 Sherpa fell and 1 was killed. Because there were so few climbers there, all of us were brought into the rescue. A helicopter was brought in, and we had to bury this Sherpa who was alive or died. And I slept by him. He was in a blue tarp. And I started to inquire about this man. Who was he? Where did he come from? Did he have family? I always say that when you get up into the higher regions of the Himalaya, the wheel hasn't even been invented yet. So it's all word of mouth. No one knows quite who he is, where he came from. But I did find out from somebody that he had an 18-year-old wife and an 18-month-old child. I was told a son. And I said, what happens? Well, it's not good. It's a very patriarchal society. The men do better than a widowed woman, and her chances are not very good. She can panhandle because of all the people trekking to Everest Base Camp and try to get some money. She can go back with her family, but they're very nomadic and grow potatoes and take yak around. Or worse comes to worse, the human trafficking piece is a big part of it, and they're snatched off the street and sent to India. Well, that 18-month-old turned out not to be a little boy, but to be a little girl, which makes it even more dangerous. And so since 2008, I have been sending money over to Nepal, which is not as easy as it sounds because they don't have banks. And you don't really know who's taking the money, where it's going, what's happening to it. But through a lot of different stories, right back to North Conway, New Hampshire, I found a Sherpa who has been helping me raise this little girl who is now 15 years old. And I bring her up because she's about to end 8th grade, and I'm hoping to look into bringing her here to the United States. And Kathy and I have been talking because this is a whole new adventure I hadn't even thought of yet, because there's more to it than just bringing a child over. But she's doing extremely well. And I feel good because her mom was able to remarry, which is also not done too often in the Sherpa culture. They're very, they won't marry another man's widow because they're superstitious. And mostly it's because of money, I have to say, especially if she has kids. So by me taking care of the child, the mother was free to remarry, which is a good thing. So all of that pays into my story of, again, how interesting the things that come your way, those serendipitous moments. That who would have thought that when I couldn't climb the mountain I wanted to, my life has been affected since 2008 by a little girl who's now 15. And so that never would have happened had I had not been able to go to China. So that's not what I mean, the serendipitous stories. So I went back to Everest in 2010. I had a new team. I had a lot of experience. I really thought I was going to kick it this time, and the exact same thing happened at the exact same spot, and I realized I would never be able to summit Everest. And it was ironic that it was MS that got me to Everest, and it was MS that took Everest away, because I couldn't do it with the neurological disease. I called my doctor at Brigham and Women's from Everest, told him my symptoms, and it was written down in all the medical journals that it was the prolonged lack of oxygen to the brain that made me have an exacerbation. You just can't live that long above 20,000 feet and not have some sort of effect. So I'd never be able to get to the top of Everest. Now, maybe somebody else with MS can, maybe theirs is just different enough because it's such a weird illness. And I have heard of others, so nothing's been documented, but I have heard that there's another girl who has made an attempt. Anyway, I came back dejected. And the first thing I did when I got back to the Boston area was lay on the couch, eat bonbons, and watch Oprah. I felt like I was a failure. I hadn't made it. My mission, and I know it was a lofty mission, but it was mine. And I had been working on it for 8 years. And here the MS had taken it away. So I went into that deep, dark funk of feeling miserably sorry for myself. I thought I was a wash up. I thought I was a phony. And I realized you can't leave me on the couch for too long, because I started thinking about, well, what is Everest? Well, it's considered the top of the world, but is it the only top of the world? And through some investigating, and since I was so connected to explorers, it only took about 2 emails and a phone call to realize that I was going to go to the North Pole, the geographical top of the world. And I went there in 2011. I took a dog sled team out of Oslo, Norway, went across the ice from the 78th parallel to the 90th, stood on the top of the world. And my mission not so much became climb the mountains, see what I can do. It became about failure. And is there really failure? Not really. Set your sight on a goal. And if you can't get there the way you thought, find another way to the top. And that's exactly what I did. I found another way to stand on top of the world and went to that North Pole. It was amazing, by the way, and it really did change my entire mission, making me much more humble, much more in tune with people with multiple sclerosis who do struggle reaching their goal. And again, going back to find whatever it is you're passionate about. And once you reach it, see what you can do with it. And I carry a flag with me. The flag is signed by all the kids from the Donald McKay School in East Boston since 2006 who follow my mission. The flag is signed by my little Sherpa girl who's the 15-year-old now. And I carry that flag mostly for all of us living with multiple sclerosis because that flag belongs to all of them because I couldn't do this alone. Knowing all the people I know, knowing all the people with MS, I realized that my climbs and all the crazy thing I do belong to them because I hope that they too can find their own mountain and whatever it takes, go for that top. I went on to do the South Pole for no other reason than it was there. I felt if I did the top, I might as well do the bottom. What was cool is I did it the year, it was the 100th anniversary of the discovery of the pole. So it was really neat to be there at the 100th year, exactly the day that Scott and Amiston came to the South Pole. Took my flag with me. Now I need to talk about the school kids at the Donald McKay School. In 2006, I was invited to speak at that school. I was invited because they had read about me in the Boston Globe, and the 4th grade teacher, Mr. Jim Clear, a very dear friend of mine now, he was a climber from Montana. His principal said, you got to see if this woman will come to the school. I came in, I fell in love with the 4th graders. They were all taking notes. They were so connected. They were so excited. I said, I got to keep coming. I can't just make it once. Well, 2006 to 2022, I've now been at that school like 16 years. The very first year I was there, a little girl, Mr. Clear had this great idea that the kids should write letters and they should write to NBC, ABC, CBS, Michelle Obama, you name it, write to anybody famous and tell them about Wendy Booker. Now I felt really bad. These kids are 10. Getting your name in the papers is really difficult. And I didn't want their feelings to be hurt when all these top companies didn't pay any attention to them. So I go in the classroom, I said, thank you so much. I'm so glad you did it. But I don't want you to feel bad if nothing happens. Well, a little girl named Lisa Herrera wrote a letter. Nothing happened. Now the little 4th graders are in the 5th grade. I've moved to Colorado because I'm training for Everest. And CBS Sunday Morning picked up Lisa Herrera's letter. They picked it up because Anthony Doan was walking through the mail room and there was a piece of paper on the floor without an envelope, and he picked it up and it was written on the blue school, the blue and striped paper in a little kid's handwriting, and he read it. And here came the story. And CBS Sunday Morning followed my 4th grade class and then me. And why I'm telling you this is Lisa Herrera was 10. Lisa Herrera today is 25 years old and was just diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. Lisa Herrera and I are now working on my nonprofit, and she just was diagnosed, I want to say around Thanksgiving. And she is going to be covering the young people with the illness. They think she's had it, she was about 15. She now is a nurse at Brigham and Women's. She has 2 children, but that's the remarkable thing. At 10, in 4th grade, I meet her. She writes to CBS, her letter gets found, and now she herself has MS. I told her she better write back to CBS, don't you think? I have written a book. I found it as difficult as climbing Everest. I did not include Everest in the book. It's the first 6 of the 7 summits. And my intent after the South Pole is I moved to Clam Gulch, Alaska, and started training for the Iditarod. I was anxious to be the first person with MS, and I wanted the original Iditarod was to take drugs for to Nome, Alaska for diphtheria to save the kids of Nome. And I thought how cool to bring the drugs of MS to Nome to show how far we've come. in January of 2013, I receive a phone call. I'm out mushing. I'm filthy. It's one of the dirtiest sports I've ever undertaken. And a phone call comes from Teva Neuroscience. After 16 years, they are no longer going to be sponsoring me. They are no longer sponsoring anybody. They got all of the drug companies got warned by the FDA that their marketing practices were getting a little bit over the edge. And they just literally said no more sponsorship of anyone. And my answer was, but I'm in Clam Gulch, Alaska. You can't leave me here. I stayed on in Alaska for a short time, but I was never able to complete the Iditarod, but that's okay, because that makes what dreams are made of, and I follow it. But I came back very reluctantly to the US, and that's when I started the nonprofit MS Insight, and have a wonderful team, and we're going along, and our newest thing is to study virtual reality, because we've realized, if I'm new to this, but we have one of our girls who works on the foundation is very affected by MS. She has primary progressive, and she's been in rehab hospital for 6 weeks. And we sent her a virtual reality headset. And from her wheelchair, she's able to do what looks like boxing. And she all of a sudden is so into it. She's doing it 45 minutes a day. And the doctors are taking notice that she's using her core, that she's helping her physical ability, her blood pressure, and she's having a blast. So that's what we've decided we really want to start studying, and are working with some pharmaceutical companies of following patients who are putting on a headset and are trying to walk on treadmills and things that they might never have done. It has to be very closely supervised. It's very much in its infancy, but it's really cool to see someone with MS get to explore a world they never would have imagined. So that's how my whole story, in a very quick nutshell, has come to be. And now I live in Ashland, New Hampshire. Grew up as a summer resident in Moultonborough. My parents were on Winnipesaukee. I also have a summer camp over on Canasaka, and very busy in New Hampshire. And here I'm skiing in Vermont. Go figure, I could have skied right from home, but we have friends here as well. I have taken up a new sport. 2 years ago, I started rowing sculls on Squam Lake, and I'm so addicted that I'm going to try to find some sponsorship and see if I can get a person with MS maybe to the head of the Charles. So that's my next, I always need something on my bucket list, and now the rowing has been that. I can quickly, I'm going to share screen. I almost forgot about my photos. Can you see these pictures? Kathy, are they there? Okay, this is the very first time I ever climbed anything. This is in Colorado. We were climbing a 14,000 peak. Look how young. I was in my 40s. The mountain was called Antero, and I climbed it with the Teva crew. They had just asked me to climb, and I got extremely sick, and I threw up all over the vice president of Teva Neuroscience. That's what I remember about that photo. This is in New Hampshire. This is of course, in the Whites. This is the very first time I ever learned how to start climbing. When you start climbing the big peaks, you start doing rock first. And the reason is that you want to get good at all these systems before you have big mittens and big clothes on your hands. You want to get quite adept at using the ropes, using the locking carabiners. So you always start on rock first. I'm going to back up 1 minute, because that's Carol and myself almost at the finish line of the 2000 Boston Marathon. And by the way, Carol has never run again. You can tell by her face. I kept asking her if she would run another marathon with me, and her answer is, what part of no do you not understand? So you can tell I lost my running buddy, but there she is. And I love talking about her because she's not here to defend herself. Before I learned on rock, I of course had to start on an indoor gym. And that one I showed you. This again is the first time on, this is Cathedral Ledge in North Conway when I was learning how to start with rock climbing. I prefer ice much more. This is recently, this is about 3 years ago, El Dorado Canyon in Colorado. This is back in New Hampshire. This is the Flume area in the wintertime off of the Kangamangas. This is the ice climbing, which I love. This is Denali. This is called the head wall. Again, you can see a lot of climbers. It almost looks like that same Congo line. This is at about 17,000 feet. And that's that huge backpack that you carry with everything in it, including that thing on my back is my sleeping pad. And it's very vertical here. They do have ropes set into the mountain, which I'm clipped into. That very taut rope, there's 2 of them, are holding you onto the mountain. They're called fixed lines. In the beginning, these mountains, of course, didn't have it. Even Everest now has fixed ropes from about, well, they're all over the place, but definitely when you get above 26,000, it's all ropes like that. This is the summit to Denali. There's a 3,000-foot drop on the right and a 4,000-foot drop on the left with a very skinny little pathway heading over to the top. The rule is that climbers coming down have right of way over climbers heading up. So you step over that little edge, putting one foot into oblivion while the other one holds on to that little path. Now, I found out that I'm a crier. And when I reach the top of or get close, I start bawling my eyes out. So I'm climbing this ridge. This is the summit ridge. The climbers are coming down. And as they were coming down, they're all saying, oh my gosh, congratulations. The first person with MS is about to summit. And I was crying so hard that they decided they better not say anything. So everybody knew I was up there just badly crying, not good crying, really girly girl crying. And every time I see that ridge, that's what I remember. Oops. I got it. I'm making my computer do. And this is Vincent Massive. I'm the one on the right with the teeth. Those are the down suits that you always see. You only wear those in Antarctica and on Everest. You won't get lost wearing them. I am partly unzipped, which is rare, but that package in my hand either is food or hand warmers, and you keep those inside your zippered like cocoon. So that's why it's open. So that's how we look going up. And that's myself at the top. I think I was getting ready to spread John's ashes, but that's the top of Vincent in Antarctica, which is my favorite. Everyone asked me what my favorite is, that would be it. This is in Nepal on the way to Everest. Quite warm. Everyone's always remarking, in the sunlight during the day, you're baking hot. And the minute you stop, you get extremely cold. But anytime you're moving, you're definitely wearing fewer clothes. This is training on a ladder in Bend, Oregon, as I was preparing to climb Everest. That device in my hand is called a Jumar, and that's what you travel on those fixed ropes with. So crossing ladders while Jumaring is what I was doing. If I fell off there, I think I'd fall all of 2 feet, so no big deal. This is Everest. This is the first glimpse you get when you're climbing. This is lower down in the valley where it's still pretty and lush and green, but that's what you're looking at. That's the real ladder on Everest. In the back, you can see base camp. So this is in the Khumbu Ice Falls. This was the very first ladder I ever went across. And that's another one. And you stop taking pictures because it is so dangerous. You'll make everybody really angry if you keep saying, wait, let me get a photo. So you do very few pictures, but I was able to grab a few. I have no idea how deep that crevasse was, but you can see behind me many, and all these big chunks of ice that are tumbling. This is base camp looking up. At the top of Everest is on the right, and you can see it's yellowish. They call that the yellow band. Lower down where that big hunk of ice and snow is dangling, that's China you're looking at. That year that this was taken, that piece fell and a Sherpa was killed right there when it tumbled on him. But that is part of Everest. This was before the big time in 2015 when that same area avalanched off and took out quite a few of the Sherpa who were preparing the route for the climbing season. You live here at this base camp for a long time. It's awful. And that's the ice field. That's the Khumbu Ice Falls around me. It's hard to tell how large it is in perspective, but it's huge. Again, that's Everest with the Khumbu Ice Falls coming down like a tongue in the middle. In the back, there's a jagged, I don't know if my pointer works, right there, that's Lhotse. This is Everest. And then over here is Nutse, you can't see it. It's a dreadful mountain. The reason that we climbers only summit from about May 20th to May 25th is that 50 weeks out of the year, the jet stream is hitting the top of that mountain. And for some geological reason, the jet stream lifts for 2 weeks every year. And that's why you see that Congo line. There's a very short time frame to go for the summit. And the more that Nepal is granting permits, the more people who are climbing, the more backlogged it's going to get because there's such a short window of opportunity. This is the South Pole, the geographical South Pole. John's ashes happen to be right there at my feet, if you can see them. I'm holding on to the marker that marks the true bottom of the world. This is the North Pole, quite a difference between the two. It all looks icy, but the North Pole is moving all the time. And you can be going along and all of a sudden you're in the water. So everything we have on our sled is prepare for possibly entering the water. You have a guide who goes on ahead and his job is to watch that you don't fall in the water. Whoop. Oh, maybe that's the last one. That's the last picture. So I will go back to stop sharing. And now quickly, 6 o'clock, would love to take questions. Shall I go down to chat?
Are there anyone have any questions for Wendy? Wendy, you've done so much. You are such an inspiration. Whoops.
That was me, wrong button. Here I am.
I said, you're such an inspiration and we're so grateful to have the opportunity, number one, to have you in our neighborhood. Love that. We're getting to know you. And then to hear about the work that you're doing for whether it's a school in East Boston, whether it's for the Sherpa girl, whether it's for the MS community, but all of these obstacles and that haven't been obstacles for you. You've worked so hard to meet these challenges. It's impressive. I don't know if people want to write later to you if they have questions, but anyone?
Last time I was on the book with Ty Gagney last month.
Yeah.
I could not get enough of him. It was so interesting as a climber to hear his stories. And it's funny, I learned to climb on Mount Washington and in the Whites. All that technical climbing was right here in our own backyard. And I laugh because I moved to Colorado and they're very snotty out there because their mountains are 14,000 and they go, oh, you New Englanders. Well, you know what I would tell them? We start at the bottom. You know, we're at sea level. When you climb a 14er in Colorado, you start at 11. I think we're working very hard. But I have to give credit to the International Mountain Climbing School in North Conway. But outfitted me. I told them they drew the short straw. They had 1 year to get this woman with MS to the top of Denali. It was a spectacular place to learn. And the Whites are an amazing playground. So listening to Ty, and they are dangerous. Mount Washington, as you all know from living here, has an extremely high death rate. And part of the problem is you have people who come from Boston or New York. It's a beautiful day and they say, let's climb Washington, not realizing that the weather can turn on a dime. So aren't we lucky we have it?
Right. Well, we'll let you go and thank you so much for sharing with us. And thank you those of you who jumped on for this program. I'll just say really quickly that our next program is also on the 17th, but of next month with Lauren and Peter Thompson and Biff Sutcliffe sharing the history of the Deerwood camp. So we'll look forward to that. And Wendy, again, thank you very much. Good night, everybody.
Diane, keep in touch.
All right.